Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Bogey podcast with Dave and Johnny. We are absolutely honoured to be joined by an Irish legend, Ryder Cup player, 16 wins on tour, and just a legend in Irish sport. So, Eamonn Darcy, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be able to do something about golf at this stage. What's going on, you know?
We're joined by golf royalty, as Dave was saying. A few of your awards and mementos are actually just behind you. You have a lovely set of older golf clubs, but then also a lot of Ryder Cup memorabilia behind you.
Yeah, this room, my wife Suzanne, she put it together. Just a few golf trophies over the years and the Ryder Cups and that, and my old pals, the O'Connors and that. Just pictures around the room of these guys.
I'm sure you've got a lifetime's worth of memories. We actually, Dave and I were chatting just before we went online here, and on one of the web pages about your golfing career, it says you turned professional with a handicap of 12.
I didn't play golf as an amateur. I just wanted to be a jockey, and right.
Yeah.
You're 6'1".
So all of a sudden I got too big, and well, I didn't play golf, and the local pro in Delgany, Jimmy Bradshaw, asked me if I wanted to become an assistant range to Watty Sullivan. And I knew my career of horses was finished, so that's how I started.
That's certainly a unique entry into the professional game.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I was 17 and I played off 12 handicap, and at 22, I actually don't like saying this, I was the number one player on the Ryder Cup. For Great Britain and Ireland.
That's if I had that accolade to my name, I would absolutely use that all the time.
No, I don't. I promise you, I don't.
And what was it like? Was it just you wanted to get it? We were looking for a career or a job at that time, and then realized that you were actually really good at it?
Well, you know, anybody who saw me playing told me I was completely mad. To become a golf pro, that I had no chance playing it as a living. I could become a club pro, be a club maker and teach and sell teas, but that didn't happen till I went to England when I was 18 and a half years old, where my boss then was a really good player and he was interested in my playing abilities, which were pretty terrible at the time, but I was a pitcher coming from Delgany. Unless you're a good pitcher in Delgany, you can't get round there. You know, all those high greens, and you have to be able to pitch the ball. So when I used to do a bit of caddying, that I used to do a lot of pitching and things like that. So really. Didn't really reflect how I could play. That was it. But it didn't take me long when I started to do a bit of practice, and that I started shooting a few good scores.
And so, was there a point where you decided that the tour game was a route for you, or how did that come about?
Well, as I say, I used to play with my boss in England. His name was David Parsonage, at a golf club called Erywash Valley. He was only a young guy. He was only 27, and we used to go out every evening in the summer and play. And he said to me, "I think you have a future playing. Your short game is so good. If you could just work on your long game." So that was that. And then I played in a couple of local events, and I broke 70, and I thought maybe I can play. That was in probably 1972. And then 73, I think I went on the tour where they had this pre-qualifying, and I made a few cuts. And 74, I got going. I finished. I think I finished around. I kept the card, so I got into it pretty quick. And then in 75, I finished third. So it all happened very quickly with me, from sort of making £3 a week to making sort of 40 grand a year.
That's really interesting, because when you did turn pro, you hit the ground running and started very well. As you mentioned there, 75, third on the order of merit. The year later, 76, you came second only to Seve. So that progression from turning pro off a handicap of 12 to just how many years later, like 6 or so years later, you're on tour?
Yeah, from starting around 72, 73, I was an established player at 70 in 1976. 77, I had played 2 Ryder Cups.
It's a very swift progression then from turning professional for yourself. Like, how did you find the tour when you were out there?
Well, in the beginning, I probably felt a little bit uneasy that when I say uneasy, I was sort of there were a lot of guys with very fancy-looking swings that were good players, but I mean, they probably didn't do as well as they should have done. I was more comfortable when I palled up with Christy O'Connor Jr. and we became good friends, and we used to travel together, and then that was sort of the turning point as regards to traveling and that, because it was a little bit of an ordeal, sort of coming from a small village in Delgany and to suddenly living out of a suitcase and going around the world.
And how did you and Christy hook up? Because you are very, very good friends, and the two of you traveled the world and played around the world. Was that just a case of you grew up playing the game together, or how did that friendship blossom?
I hadn't met Christy till probably I was around 20, 21 years of age. He came from the west of Ireland. I came from Delgany. We met out playing on the tour, and I think it was when we partnered each other in a tournament called the Summary Beta Ball. We played and we won that. We actually won that twice. Maybe could have been even back to back. That's when we became really good friends, you know, when we started playing. And then I was invited then to play with Christy Senior every week. He hadn't retired at the time. And I used to play a practice round with him, Hugh Jackson, Christy Jr. and myself. We play every week. We play every Wednesday before the tournament. So yeah, it was. I was comfortable now at this stage with my friends out there on the tour.
And on that, tell us about the lifestyle of a tour player. Then, was it very different? Was it a lot more convivial? A lot more time socializing? Was it just a good place to be at the time?
Well, back in the early mid 70s, I mean, it was. I mean, so different. You did everything yourself. Everything. You traveled by car around the continent. You booked your own hotels. And where later on, everything, when I got into where I had a manager, then everything was done for you. You know, all you had to do was show up. But back in the early days, you did everything yourself. And that was the norm. I mean, everybody did it. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. It was great to see both sides of the coin. The early days playing with all these great players with the wooden-headed clubs, and then moving on to the power game.
And where did you feel most comfortable in terms of your place on that? Because as you said, you came to the fore very, very quickly. And did you feel like you belonged out there very quickly because of it, or was it like an act of defiance that you were going to show people how good you were, despite? And your swing was so unique at the time, it probably wouldn't have been looked upon in the same way that it might have even been looked on now.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, swings were everything. If you didn't have a pretty swing, you shouldn't have been out there. That was the theory. But now you just look at the guys in America and in Europe. I mean, they don't even bother about their swings. It's just how you hit the ball. You analyze how you hit the ball. You analyze your performances, not just how you swing it. Because I remember playing the Carols in Woodbrook, and they had £1,000 for a 2 on the 18th, and I was playing with Harry Bradshaw, and I think I wanted a 3 up the last for 79. Not even close to making the cut. But I hit this shot and went into the hole, and it jumped out again. And I remember walked off the green up to me. He said, "You'll never come to making £1,000 playing golf."
How wrong, how wrong they were.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is funny now, because I've heard your name. I've never heard your name or Jimmy Bruin's mentioned as frequently as I have in the past 18 months.
Okay.
Because obviously Matthew Wolff has brought this swing to golf, and everyone just wants to talk about it, wants to see it, because it's just not the norm. And I wondered now, I was like, if you were playing now, whereas there would have been a general pros way of swinging back in the 70s, 80s, now you'd be on TV all the time.
Yeah, they're just you see, they don't really analyze swings now like they did back in the day. They see how you hit the ball, and they look at your finishes. Nothing else. It's all performance now. You can have the nicest looking swing. If you don't perform, nobody's interested. And I mean, I guess it would have been probably nice if my swing had been a bit more orthodox. But so many people come up to me and they say, we remember you because you're the guy with the goofy swing, and it's great that you've done so well in the game, and so yeah, swings. I mean, Henry Cotton was a good friend of mine, and I used to go down to Portugal when he was in Penina, and I'd probably stay a few days, and he'd have a lucky balls and went and play in that. But he used to call me laddie. One thing he always said to me was, never let anybody change your swing. Because he played with Bruin. Bruin was his partner. Because at dinner one night, I said to him, who was the best player you've ever played with? Or who would you want to play with for money against any other two guys? He didn't even hesitate. He said, Jimmy Bruin. And he said about people talk about how far he hit the ball. He said, don't talk how good of a chipper and putter he was. I never saw him playing, but I mean, he hurt his wrist when he was very young. I think he retired quite young.
And on that, do you see yourself, given the attention that all these guys get now, do you wish you were kind of transported into, or how would you feel you get on right now with the game that you had that won so many tournaments there? Because a lot of people would say that it would have been hugely suited to being successful now.
I mean, obviously you can't turn the clocks back, but it'd be lovely sort of, yeah, it'd be lovely to be in my prime, to go out and play against the guys now. I mean, I'm 68 years of age, and I still hit it 280 yards, you know. So I mean, if I was 28, I'm sure I'd be hitting it further than that with the modern day equipment. So yeah, I mean, the game has changed so much now. I mean, the equipment, the players themselves have changed so much. They're all so fit now. They work out, and they really put more into it now than sort of the guys back in my day. You can go on tour now for 5 years or 6 years and be successful and be a millionaire. I mean, in my time, you made a living.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you had a career that and a swing that traveled very incredibly well. Like you, 16 worldwide wins. What was travel and playing like in that time? Because you'd played the Australian tour a number of times. You'd won the New Zealand Shell Open. What was it like traveling around the world to play?
I loved it, especially those warm countries. I used to love playing in the heat, you know.
Yeah,
it was just great to. I mean, that was my job. I was a touring pro, and that was it. If there was a tournament on, I would play in it.
Yeah, and like I said, you were playing around the world and mixing with some of the best, and I think the 70s and 80s must have been an incredibly exciting time to have been on the tour and being part of the European tour. You look at the names of like Faldo, Trevino, Langer, and the likes. Like, what was it like playing with those guys week in, week out?
I mean, it was great. Seve. I mean, playing with Seve he was exciting to play with, and Faldo was like a machine. He was another sort of Ben Hogan. Nothing really exciting, but just split the fairway all the time on the green. He was a good putter. Seve was totally different. I mean, Seve would hit it everywhere, and he was like Palmer. And he'd play shots that you wouldn't even think about playing. He was an incredible vision, and nothing sort of fazed him. There was so many good players back in those days that I played with Sam Snead. I mean, there was a guy. He had a wonderful swing. I mean, he had a wonderful swing, effortless. And I mean, if he had been around now in his prime, I mean, what would he have done? You know, even then he won I think he won 80 tournaments, you know. So it was great to have played with all those players. Roberto De Vincenzo, who else? Gary Player, Palmer, Nicklaus, Weisskopf, Miller. They were all sort of. I know. I mean, Christie Jr. and I were the opening match in 1975. We were only kids, and we were drawn against Nicklaus and Miller, the opening match. Imagine how you feel about that.
Oh my God!
Yeah. I started birdie par and we're one down.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
What was Sam Snead like? You'd mentioned the tour wins. What was he like to play with or play against?
He was tough. He was so sort of he was tough. I remember playing with him one day. I played with him before, and this young guy was drawn to play with us, and he was just overawed by the idea of playing with Sam. And he walked up to him and he said, "Mr. Snead, this is the best day of my life," he said, "on a golf course, to be playing with you today." And Sam said to him, "Well, son," he said, "it's like this. You play shit, you draw shit." And I thought, oh God, that was some impression he made on him, I tell you. But that's the way he was. I remember saying it to JC, his nephew, and he said he didn't mean it. He meant it all right. He was just mean.
And go back to that first tee in the Ryder Cup against Nicklaus and Miller, and two Irish lads from, like, you're only from across 2 hours, 3 hours away from each other, and you end up on that stage. What was that match like? As in, was that kind of a moment where you realized, "Geez, I've made it now. We've made it."
I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just so nervous.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I played in America before. I played in the World Open in Pinehurst. I finished 9th in that, but that was my first Ryder Cup. I was 22 years of age, and Christy was 25, and these two guys had made it, you know. And the crowds were just, the crowds, they were tough back in the day. But it was great. It was a great experience. I mean, looking back on it, it was a great experience. We played well. We were 12 under for 16 holes, and we were beaten 3-2. Yeah.
That's scandalous.
Yeah.
And obviously, the golf was at such a high standard, and it's probably easy to be overawed by that, but you still obviously managed to perform to that level.
Yeah. Well, Christy and I were we had played a lot of golf together, and, you know, winning those tournaments together in the 4-ball. So we knew each other's game so well. But to meet those guys, I would have preferred to have met somebody else now.
I think everyone would, to be honest.
You obviously had a close friendship with Christy Jr. What was Christy Sr. like?
Christy Sr. was incredible. He was an amazing golfer. He couldn't understand how Christy Jr. and myself could hit such bad shots. He'd say to us, "How can you hit a shot like that?" It wasn't in his armory to hit shots like that. He was so well balanced. You know, the first tournament I won, no, it wasn't. I won the World Under 25s. And Christy Sr. just won the World Seniors out in California. And we were drawn together to play in the Dunlop Masters in Hermitage in the last round. We were timed going into the last round, I think, or he was one ahead. And we were miles ahead of anybody else. Anyway, we go out and we played. And he played beautiful. I played terrible. But my chipping and putting was fantastic. And to cut a long story short, I mean, he wasn't happy that he hadn't sort of got away from me in the tournament. And on the last hole in Hermitage, I hit it to about 10 feet. He hit it 15 feet short, and he's a shot ahead of me. And he rolled it 3 feet short, and I hold mine, and he missed. So a 3 to a 5, and I won the tournament. And there were a few people from Dalgany out watching this, and they clapped when he missed the putt, not because he missed it, because I'd won the tournament. And I promise you, if he had had a gun, he'd have shot me. And that was my first introduction to Christy Senior. The softest thing about Christy was his teeth, you know.
So it sounds a little like kind of the way it came through at School of Hard Knocks, that you dealt with tough people. Like golfers were not, they were, I suppose there wasn't the money there, so they were keen to win everything they possibly could and take as much out of your pocket.
They wanted everything.
Yeah.
They wanted anything that was there, they wanted it, because as you said, the money wasn't there. And but he was an incredible player. I mean, his balance and his rhythm and his strength was fantastic. He never won a major. He should have won the major. They're saying that he only played in one major a year, and now the boy's playing 4. But he had a chance a couple of times to win the Open, and it didn't happen for him. But up till when Padraig came onto the scene, to me, he was the best player that we ever had in Ireland, you know. And even taken away, not taken away from Padraig's thing, I mean, he made 10 Ryder Cups on the bounce. 20 years in a row, he just played 10 Ryder Cups. I mean, it's an incredible achievement. So to have him as one of your peers and playing with him, you learn so much. The things he used to say to you, he wouldn't be looking at your swing. If I wasn't playing well, he'd say, just watch that ball a little longer. Something like that, you know. Wow. Where somebody else wouldn't see that. It was a great experience. It was great to have known it. Great guy too. Off the course, I mean, he was great fun. Great stories. He had great stories to tell. He played against all those guys, Hogan and all those guys. Took them on, and you know.
You mentioned his Christy Senior's 20 years of playing Ryder Cup, 10 in a row. And do you want to bring us into 87 into the Ryder Cup there, actually, because that was a huge win, especially, and a huge win for you at the time, given the record going in, and probably Ben Crenshaw, who was obviously at I suppose probably Ben Crenshaw at the peak of his powers as well at that time. So yeah, bring us into that and tell us about the team and the camaraderie that was there and the fun that you would have had doing that, because we don't get an insight to that.
Well, I played under Jacqueline before in a tournament called the Hennessy Cup. He was the captain. So I knew Tony, and I played with him in the Ryder Cup. He was my partner. And when he became captain of the Ryder Cup, he changed everything from flying sort of at the back of a plane. We had Concorde just for the team, you know. He told the European Tour he would do it, but it had to be his way. Had to be first class all the way for his players. So that's how it kicked off. And when we were flying over, I remember the captain of Concorde said, guys, would you like to have a look around, have a flyover? And we said, love to. And he asked for permission, and he was refused. And he was putting this thing down to land. And suddenly he got permission to fly over around Ohio, around Muirfield. And from being a few hundred feet off the ground, he takes this thing up in the air again, Concorde. And it was the noise he was playing, you can imagine. I mean, the roar of it. And he said, well, guys, he said, they'll know you're in town now. So we flew around. This is a true story. We flew around over a few golf courses, and he said, no, that's not good enough for you guys. And all of a sudden he said, this looks better. And we flew down over Muirfield Village, and we flew down on the 18th. And I remember talking to Larry Bean and poor old Payne Stewart. God be good to him. He's a good friend of mine. And they said they saw this jet coming down the 18th, and they thought, Jesus, this looks like World War III, you know, this Concorde coming down. And that was the start of it. And when we landed, I remember we had all got white Cadillacs with our names on the plates. It was so American, you know, the drum, fanfare, cheerleaders. And we have a police escort back to Muirfield. They stopped motorway, closed motorways and everything for us guys to go. Anyway, just jumping the gun a bit, I remember when we won and going back on the Monday, we were stuck in traffic jams for 3 hours. They were bad losers, you know.
They didn't take it well.
They took it so badly.
I don't blame them. I think Nicklaus was the golden child of golf in America. You broke America's heart that year.
Yeah. You know, he lost all the greens. He'd cut them so tight. Every morning for the matches, they were going out and they were spraying them with green paint. We were putting on the roots. The greens had gone brown.
Wow.
Because I remember during the closing ceremony, so Olazabal started dancing on the green. And one of the officials said, Mr. Olazabal, please, you damage the green. And Jack came over, he said, it doesn't matter. He said, we've lost all the greens. He actually got into trouble there financially with that. But they were so fast, the greens. You have no idea. They were like polished marble. And we put it better than they did. That was the bottom line. The team was fantastic. The guys that were playing on it, and they were playing at their very best, guys like Langer, Woosnam, Faldo, Seve, they were all playing great. And they were winning the Lyle. They were all winning the matches, the 4-ball matches. And we had such a good lead going into the singles. It looked like, you know, we couldn't get caught. Of course, as you know, 12 singles, and it was just going pear-shaped. But we were so far ahead after day 2. I remember, what's his name? Come to me in a second. But he wanted cheerleaders. He wanted flags, people to start doing this cheerleading on the first tee. And yeah, I know. It was just ridiculous. I still can't think of his name. But it didn't do them any good anyway. But I remember it was 200 girls at the back of the first tee going, screaming. Dan Poe was playing Sam Torrance, and they're going, Dan, he's our man. If he can't win, no one can. And he got stuffed by Torrance, you know? Yeah.
That would have been a Ryder Cup team that went in with a lot of major wins, as in finally broken through in the Masters, between Seve had obviously done it, Woozy done it, then Faldo came along and he did it. Sandy Lyle had done it. So you were probably more feared than a lot of teams that went over there, I'd say.
I'd say up to recently, it was probably the best team that Europe ever had, as regards the winners and things like that. And not just that there were names, but they were playing great. That's the big thing. You know, it's no use playing at that team if your game is no good. And I've seen that happen so many times before. But guys got picked on the team just because of who they were, and they didn't do anything. But no, that was a great experience. That was, and then to sort of to play well myself in the singles was great, you know.
Yeah.
Seve and myself knocked it out in 32 below 2 score, the singles, front 9, and I was either 3 or 4 up. I was cruising, and then all of a sudden, Ben had broken his putter. I didn't know why he'd broken his putter. Somebody said to me, "How did he break his putter?" And I said, "I didn't even know. He was using a 1-iron." That's how clued in I was at the time. I was in this bubble, just playing, trying to keep it, because it was so big, that Ryder Cup. I mean, if you got ahead of yourself, you were gone out there. I mean, it was just, the atmosphere was just electric. You had to sort of try and keep it down as calm as you could. I did that for a lot of the time, and then suddenly I ended up being 1 down with 2 to play, from being 3 up, 3 or 4 up. Ben, he came back, being the champion that he was. He came back at me like I knew he probably would. But lucky enough, I was able to sort of, beat him.
And
people talk about, yeah, go on.
Sorry, that bit that you knew he was coming back, like you'd want to be bolstered by having a really good team environment behind you, I think. And there was a lot of big names in that team. Were you tight? And was it a close knit thing, or were you a little bit more disparate? Because it felt like you'd have to be to go to America.
It was very tight.
Yeah.
Very tight. I mean, everybody got on great with each other. That's why Europe has done so well in the Ryder Cup, because they are tighter than the Americans. The Americans just play for themselves, whereas the Ryder Cup, they pull harder together. And I've seen it time and time again. They play as a team, whereas America, they're not. They're getting better at it now. They've realized, they have to do something.
And did the dynamic change, and did you all get closer when Europe was included? Because obviously it was Great Britain and Ireland. So did the team kind of become more like comrades when the wider Europe was included?
Yeah, well, back in the early days when I played, it was Great Britain and Ireland. I mean, we couldn't beat America.
Yeah.
And as Nicklaus said to Lord Derby, who was one of the main guys at the time of the Ryder Cup, we have to do something because it's not working. I remember one year Wysthoff qualified, but he wouldn't play. He went off shooting, because they knew they were going to win. So when Europe came on the scene, and Seve was sort of, and you guys like Pinheiro and Olazabal, who else was there? Rivero, Canizares, all those guys. And then you had the Swedes. They come on the scene, and the Norwegians. So it made the team much, much stronger.
And with that strength did more friendship and camaraderie come with that?
Well, the camaraderie was always there, but though, when you know you have a chance of winning, it makes a big difference that you're not just making up a number to go out there, and you try that much harder.
Yeah, because that was the first back-to-back Ryder Cup win.
That was the first time we ever won in America.
Yeah.
In '87. Yeah, that was the first time, which was it was good. And Seve hold the winning putt on the 16th against Curtis Strange, and he was asked. I mean, he didn't have to say it. He was. That's why he's great. I got on great with Seve. He said, "How does it feel holding the winning putt? Your first time in America to win?" He said, "Darcy hold the winning putt," he said, which was lovely for him to say, because my putt was so important at the time. We were so far ahead, and then I remember looking at the scoreboard on 17, and we were down and lost so many matches. It had just gone pear-shaped. It was the only time I looked at the scoreboard.
And they always say that looking at scoreboards and seeing that bit of blue pop up when everything else is going a bit pear shape matters so much to everyone else out there that's left out there to play.
Yeah. But you can. That's the thing about being in that bubble. You can't do anything about the other guys. You can only do what you're doing in your match.
Yeah.
And you play. You just 1-to-1. You can't worry about anybody else.
And if we then from that, now bearing in mind where we're going in September and what we're seeing now, what are you most looking forward to? Who are you most looking forward to seeing actually this on Porrick's team, and kind of any advice, almost any advice for Porrick in his captaincy?
Well, I mean, Porrick knows. I mean, he's been there. He's done it. He knows the pitfalls with players. The problem captains can have in the Ryder Cup is if they're going real well, they keep playing the same players. I've seen it in the past, and it's been that come to the singles and they're completely burnt out. They're tired, and they lose their games. I remember Mark James did it, and who else did it? Somebody else did it. Yeah, I think it was Mark James. He had 4 rookies, and he played them till the singles. You can't do that in the Ryder Cup, and they all got beaten. You can't introduce somebody in America your first time ever playing the Ryder Cup out in the singles. I mean, that is a recipe for disaster. But just his team were playing so well, he didn't want to change them. But you can't do that either because the guys get tired. 2 rounds a day in the Ryder Cup. I mean, it doesn't matter how fit you are; it takes it out of you mentally, more mentally than physically. So it's important that Porrick plays all these players early. And I don't know how many rookies he's going to have. I mean, with this COVID, I've lost track of how anything is going, on the tour. I know the guys that are in the top 50, it's easy to see where they're coming from, but I don't know how the team is going to be even made up. Obviously, it's going to be a very strong team. But America will have a strong team also.
Yeah, I think the American team, particularly this year, looks quite daunting. I think Porrick has three picks for his team this year. Is there anyone that's jumped out or has caught your eye from any of the tour that you've watched?
No, I mean, it'd be great to see Shane on that team, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great match player.
Yeah.
He has a great short game. And, if you have a good short game in Ryder Cup, you can break guys' hearts. Seve did it. He was playing so bad. I remember he played in America. He played Tom Lehman. And he never hit a fairway. And they went right down to the wire. Tom beat him. But he did the same to Monty down here in Druids at Bike Club in the Seve Trophy. He hit it everywhere. And he beat Monty on the last green. He just, he was holding putts from everywhere. If you do that in the match play, you kill guys.
And Shane's popular with people that like playing with Shane too.
Ah, yeah, he's so laid back. I mean, it's a difficult one for Porrick. About Shane is Irish and Porrick is Irish. He has to show some form. You can't get picked. That's what I'm talking about. He won the Open 2 years ago. You can't get picked on all merit. So he has to show his hand somewhere.
Yeah. Speaking of form, new form and old form, how's your form currently on the golf? We haven't been out for a while, but how's the game?
It's breaking my heart,
Is it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can play with this executive sport, but I'd be playing on my own. And there's no fun in that,
No.
No fun in that.
So what's the golf game for you now at the moment? Are you getting out much? Are you playing a lot of kind of corporate gigs, or are you more getting out for a weekly?
I was looking forward to doing some nice corporate work this year. met some nice people who I was going to sort of do a bit of work for them, and that's all gone by the wayside.
So let's just hope we're back in March.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen this year. Probably not a lot. What do you think?
We're hoping. Well, I think Easter and then just get back. I think I'm looking forward to just getting back and meeting a few people and hanging around the club and talking rubbish on the putting green and pretending we're all great. I think really, I think just the chats that people have and the friendships.
Yeah. Golf is great for that, isn't it?
Sure, that's why we all do it, because we're all rubbish at it, like at our level. So it doesn't really matter.
No, you don't say that. Don't say that. Yeah.
But are you still playing up in Delgany, or where's the home track now?
Well, no, sometimes I play 9 holes with Gavin in Delgany, but mainly I play down in Druids. I mean, Druids is great. I mean, I'm still out in the workshop messing around with golf clubs, pulling clubs to bits, and just trying to put an extra length onto the driver, try and get an extra 15 yards and all this stuff. I guess the day that stops be the day I'll have to give it up,
Don't think that's going to happen.
I hope you're right. I
can't see it happening.
You were saying you're hitting it further now than you were when you're on tour, so I can't see you stopping any day soon.
But that just shows you how good the equipment is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's only good when you hit it out the middle, though.
Well, the thing is now that this new stuff, if you hit it out of the toe, it's even better than the middle. They brought out clubs now that the miss hits go just as good. You probably never used an old wooden head, did you?
I found one recently. Actually, found one of my dad's old Ping. Found one of the old Ping i2 wooden headed drivers, and I remember putting it down beside an actual driver, and you'd fit 5 of them into a driver nowadays.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, don't know how people hit it.
Yeah, crazy. Because I remember years ago, even the golf balls. I was with Dunlop. I was one of their staff players, and the golf balls at the time were terrible. And yeah, they used to, especially out in Africa, they used to fall out of the air. I used to get, Jack Newton used to bring me up some. He had these B51 Slattagers, and it went so far. And Jack's a good friend of mine. I'd say, listen, just stick an extra box in your suitcase. But when I used to play the Irish Open at the Carrolls, there was a guy called Dermot Sherlock. He was the rep for Titleist, and he'd walk by my bag discreetly and just put a box of Titleists beside my bag, But I got caught one year using them. Somebody had binoculars from Dunlop, and they saw me using the Titleist, and I was in trouble.
I'd say so.
They were paying me a few bob at the time, but the balls now are so good, aren't they? I mean, they're about 5 or 6 manufacturers, and I mean, it doesn't matter which of the 6 you pick, they all go great.
So there's been a lot of talk about this, about rolling back the ball or this distance debate. Do you find distance a problem?
See, the problem is now with golf clubs, they don't grow rough. If they're hosting a golf tournament, they don't grow the rough like they used to in the past, because the members can't get round. They're taking 6 hours, and that's no good. The only solution is probably water, but it doesn't seem to bother these guys. They just hit it as far and as hard as they can, and if it goes into the water, they just drop it out, hit it onto the green, and the ball would make a lot of sense if they brought the ball back a bit, because there's nobody now, I don't think, maybe 2 players who hit it under 300 yards. It's how many players hit it over 330 now. That's the question. I watched Dustin Johnston playing down in the Dare a few years ago at the JP Pro-Am, and on the 18th, he 247 yards to the flag into a nice breeze. And I thought, I wonder will he go for it now? And he said to the caddy, what do you think? The caddy said, just a nice 4-iron, he said. And he hits this 4-iron, and it just about 12 feet. And yeah, and I played with Rory in Dubai, as past winner of Dubai. They brought us out there a few years ago, and I played with him in that competition. And I was looking at his clubs, and his longest iron was a 4-iron. And I said, he had a driver, a 3-wood, and a 5-wood, and then a 4-iron and a few wedges. I said, how do you find that as your longest iron? Do you have it stronger? He said, no, just normal loft. He said, I carry it 240. You know?
Different game.
Oh, different game. Yeah, different game. You know, it's great. Great to watch.
Really is. Really is.
It's a different game for them, but listen, thank you
Great to
so
watch.
much, Eamonn, for the insight into your game, because it's there's stories there, and it's a time that we don't hear much about. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.